I guess this will be the recording for your, technically, I guess, second day of notes for trigonometry. We're going to talk about actually solving for ratios. The first thing I do want to do, though, is I want to show everybody on here what the different kinds of calculators that you may want to consider downloading on your phones so that you can do the trigonometry work at home, because the calculators on the phones do not work very well with what we're about to do. So if you have an iPhone, you can download calculator hashtag. This is what the logo will look like. So this is going to be the one that you're going to want to look for. All right, calculator hashtag. If you have anything other than an iPhone, then you're going to want to look for hyper. Okay, it's capital H, lowercase I, capital P-E-R, and this is the logo that you would look for. All right, they're free. These are going to be very easy to use. I can even show you with examples, not only on the calculator for work, it's my work, not only the calculator for school, but also the calculators for the phones. I'll bring those under the document cameras as well so you understand how to use them correctly. All right, so the notes folds directly in half. All right. So we've already talked about we should have, I know Miss Biggs' class, you guys watched the video Friday. Miss Collins, most of us did. Some of us started in class and should have finished over the weekend. Mr. Bloom, I think some of his classes may have started it. But I'm going to be going through the solving part, but we will review setting up your trig functions as well. When we open it up, the first thing we're going to talk about the sine, going through sine here, reminding ourselves about the reference angles and setting up just the ratios of this. Okay, there we go, nice. All right, so the first thing up here, it says sine of A, so it wants the ratio of sine of A. Now, we're used to seeing the theta or an x that's in here, but what's happening here is they're just asking us to go to angle A, so I'm going to be using two different colors, one for A and one for B. Again, I'm stressing with my students, you need to put an arc or something where the angle is. So this is going to be my reference angle, angle A. Okay, sine, as we've talked about before, is opposite over hypotenuse. And so whenever I go through and I start looking at this, I say, okay, this is my reference angle. My opposite is going to be over here at the 4. Okay, I'm going to put OPP. Usually we just put O, H, and A. Your hypotenuse is always going to be the same, always. So this will be hypotenuse no matter which angle you're going from. So we're just setting up the ratio of the numbers. We're not actually setting up the function to solve. We're just setting up ratios. So this would be your opposite of 4 over your hypotenuse of 5. So if I ask you to just set up the ratio of, sine of angle A, that's it. All right. Now if we approach it from angle B side, this is where I'm going to change colors to green. Oh, it doesn't really look a whole lot different there. I'll grab my lighter green and see if maybe that'll work. Okay. So here. Now that I'm looking from sine of B, the opposite end, the hypotenuse is going to stay the same. We still have hypotenuse. But my opposite side is now over here. So this is going to become the opposite side. So for my sine of B, we still have opposite over hypotenuse because it's sine. And the opposite, 3, over my hypotenuse of 5. All right? Now, what you see below, it just simply says the sine of 38 degrees. So I'm going to show you how to use the trig functions in the calculators just to simply, now this is not actually what we did on Friday. We're not solving it for that. This is just finding what the sine of 38 degrees is. So if I use my calculator here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. I'm going to go into my calculator function. You can already see I've got a lot going on here. I'm going to clear my document. Clear my scratch pad. And what you're going to want to do is we're going to need to find sine. There's a trig button right here next to your 7. You're going to want to push that. Sine is the first thing that's going to pop up. So all you do is you press your enter button down here, and then you type in that 38, and you press enter right there. And then we didn't specify what to round it to. here, so we can just put in here 0.616. Okay, so we'll put 0.616. That's all you're doing for this section right here. Okay? When we move over to actually solve for this, we are now going to be setting up our equations like we did on Friday, or maybe did on Friday with the other notes. So what we're looking at here is find our reference angle. Well, I see over here the 80 degrees. That's how I know that's my reference angle. The 90 degree will never be a reference angle. This can't be my reference angle because there's nothing there. So that's how you determine which angle you're going to go to. I always suggest, whenever I only have two sides, only write those letters, the A, O, and H. Only write those two. Don't mark all three, because it makes it a little bit easier to see if we didn't know we were doing sine. It makes it easier to see exactly which one to choose. So here, I see over here I have my opposite, and across my 90 degree angle, here is my hypotenuse. So I can look at O and H, and I can remember here that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So I see the O and the H, so I go, oh, O and H, no pun intended there, O and H goes with S, which is sine. So I know I'm going to be using sine for this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set it up like we learned. Sine of 80 degrees is equal to, we have our opposite, x, over our hypotenuse of 30. Now, to solve, what we have to do is we need to get rid of this 30 on the bottom so that we can get x by itself, because we're dividing, so the opposite's going to be multiplying. So what we do is we multiply both sides by 30, so these cancel here, and then over here we put a 30. With this in mind, with your school calculator, okay, we are going to type in, lost my little post-it that used to be on my document camera, we're going to type in exactly what we have over here, okay? So I'm going to type in 30. You actually don't have to put parentheses around it. I'm going to go back to this trig button over here, okay? And we are dealing with sine. I'm going to press enter. It'll come up with the parentheses, and we type in the 80. So what you see on my calculator here and here, other than where the parentheses are, is the same. Once I press enter, I have my answer, and I have found my missing side. That is the length of my missing side. Okay? Not a lot of calculations. It's just you have to know how to set it up. All right? So then we wind up with, I'll go ahead and write this out, 30 sine of 80 is equal to x. And so once we solved this, we found out that x was approximately, here on my calculator, we'll just round to the nearest tenth, 29.5. Okay? So we move to the next triangle over here. Big arc in my reference angle. I have over here all the way on the opposite side, and then I have across from my 90 degree angle my hypotenuse. I see the O and the H, and I know O and H go with S, which is sine. So again, I will be dealing with sine, so I'm going to set it up. Sine of my reference angle, which is 42, is equal to opposite, 35, over hypotenuse, x. Notice now the x is in a different place, okay? With trigonometry, when solving for a missing side, it's a series of either multiplying or dividing, okay? So I'm going to show you what happens here. We're going to do the same thing we did over here, and we're going to multiply by the denominator. So we multiply both sides by that x. These cancel, but what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So then on this side, we wind up with that x times the sine of 42 is equal to, what's left over here? 35. All this is multiplying. So to get x by itself, we need to do the opposite and divide. So what that looks like is you simply divide by the sine of 42 degrees, both sides. So these cancel out, you're left with this x, and it will be approximately, so in your calculator over here, you can even push the control divide and get the fraction function. Over here, I have 35 on top. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. I'm going to go to my trig function, my trig button over here. I'm going to make sure it's on, because I have sine, and then type in 42. And so what you see on my calculator is exactly what you see right here, except this one has the parentheses, around 42. Press enter, and there's my missing side. Okay, so x will be approximately 52.3. All right, so we've gotten the multiply. Simple, just multiply both sides if it's numbers in the denominator, or dividing. All right, let's go ahead and talk about cosine now. With your cosine, we'll do the same thing we just did with the sine. First, cosine of angle A. Cosine, we have learned, is adjacent over hypotenuse. All right, so from reference angle A, we want adjacent now. So we're not going over here. We want adjacent, which means next to. So right here, you're adjacent. So the cosine, both of your sides are going to touch that angle, but you need to make sure that you're not labeling the 5 as adjacent. 5 is across from the across from the 90-degree angle. So the other one, this one right here, is going to be your adjacent. Right? And I saw a lot of mistakes already made where students were labeling this one the adjacent. Yes, it is adjacent, but it is also across from the 90-degree angle, so it becomes your hypotenuse. So our adjacent of 3 over our hypotenuse of 5. All right. Then we move over to angle B. Here's our reference angle. Again, this is just going to be your 80J over your HYP. And so now we look at this. 4 now becomes my adjacent. And as discussed, hypotenuse will always be hypotenuse no matter which of the two angles we're coming from. So now we have adjacent 4 over your hypotenuse of 5. Okay, and then down here we have cosine of 38. And I kept the degrees the same so you guys could see they do come out differently. So now I'm going to come over here, go to my trig button, and cosine is going to be the second one over. So I'm just going to press over, and then press enter, type in 38, press enter, and we're going to get 0.788. We'll just round to the same thousandths place there that we did, 0.788. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up and solve for cosine now. We remember that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, this is your ka and SOHCAHTOA. I know this big saying, I'm not going to sing for it though. We're going to start off with final reference angle. Which angle do we have? We have this 32, so here's our reference angle, big ol' arc. So it's very obvious. I notice over here, across from a 90-degree angle, here's my hypotenuse. I'm just going to use H's and A's and O's now. Over here, this is adjacent. Okay? Those are the ones. So even if I didn't know this was cosine, I could look here and say A and H. Which one has A and H? Oh, cosine has A and H. So I'm obviously going to be using cosine for this problem. So I'm going to use COS, abbreviation of whatever's in my angle, 32 degrees, is going to be equal to adjacent x over hypotenuse, 25. We need to multiply both sides by whatever is in the denominator over here. So we multiply both sides by 25. Okay, so our new equation is technically 25 cosine of 32. This just, it doesn't matter about the parentheses, just the way it looks in the calculator. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to type in exactly what's right here on the left-hand side of my equal sign. Type in 25. I'm going to go back to my trig button, scroll over to cosine, and I'm going to type in 32. That's it. Press enter. And then our missing side is approximately 21.2. Okay? So x is approximately 21.2. The next one, here's our reference angle, big arc. I notice here's my hypotenuse, and then here's my adjacent. So again, I could say A and H. It's cosine. And K, so katoa. So I know that I'm going to be using cosine. So I'm going to do cosine of my angle 35 is equal to my adjacent of 30 over my hypotenuse of x. So again, we have that multiply both sides by what's in the denominator, multiply by x, so these cancel. So we're left with x cosine of 35 is equal to 30. Again, this is multiplication, so to get rid of this cosine of 35 next to the x, we divide both sides by the cosine of 35. These cancel. All that's left is that x. And when I go back to my calculator, type in exactly what I see here. So I'm going to go to my my fraction function. I'm going to type 30 in the top, and then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, use my trig button, scroll over to cosine, and type in 35. That's exactly what I have right here. Press enter, and we find that our missing side will come out to approximately 36.6. So x will be approximately 36.6. Okay? Tangent, the third and last one here. All right, start off the same way with the tangent from reference angle A. So here, tangent is we're going to be dealing with our adjacent, our opposite and our adjacent. So over here, according to angle A, reference angle A, here is my opposite, side BC. Side AC is going to be my adjacent. Tangent is opposite, TOA, OA, over adjacent. So I'll have opposite of 4 over adjacent of 3. When you move to the other angle on tangent, you're going to notice something. It's a pattern that will always occur when you switch from one reference angle to the other with tangent only. Remembering that tangent is still going to be opposite over adjacent. Now we're going from reference angle B. Opposite is over here. Adjacent's over here, not the 5. The 5 is the hypotenuse. Adjacent's the other one that's next to the angle. So this becomes our new adjacent. So our opposite of 3 over our adjacent of 4. What do you notice about the two? We need to get those math words. Use your math words, inverses. Okay, all we've done was we flipped the fraction. Now that only works with your tangent. Okay, tangent of 38 degrees. Let's get those calculators back out. We get our I know if you guys are at home watching the video, obviously, I will show you how to use the other ones. We're going to go to our trig functions, scroll over to tangent, press enter, type in that 38 degrees, enter. So we have approximately 0.781. So we'll type over here, or type right, 0.781. Now we'll look over here at our examples. Here is my reference angle, big arc. I notice all the way over here I have my opposite side. The 12 is going to be my adjacent because the other one is my hypotenuse. And as a reminder, TOA, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So when we set this up, we see, oh, I have O and A. That's why I'm not putting the H over here. Now, if they give you all three, and, that's when you're going to have to try to figure out, that's when you're going to be told, hey, find the sine of this. But here, since there's nothing here, I don't want to write my H. That way I see O and A, and I say, okay, look at my SOHCAHTOA, which is on your reference sheet that you'll be getting. I can see that O and A goes with tangent. So here I have tangent of whatever's in my angle, 32, whatever's my reference angle, is equal to O opposite, X, over A adjacent, 12. multiply by whatever's on the denominator. So those cancel both sides. What you do to one, you do to the other. Learned that probably in 6th or 7th grade. So we have 12 times the tangent of 32 is equal to, all that's left over here is the x. In the calculator, I will type in exactly what's there. Get our 12, go to my trig button, scroll over to tangent, press enter, and then type in my degree measurement of 32, press enter, and the missing side is approximately 7.5, rounded to the nearest tenth. Remember, the 9 is going to bump that 4 up. So x will be approximately 7.5. And if you haven't guessed already what's going to happen on the next one, as you can see the pattern, multiply, divide, multiply, divide, multiply. Yep, we're going to divide. Where's our reference angle? I know you're sitting at home yelling out the answers right now. Big arc right there, 43 degrees. Okay, so all the way on the opposite side over here, 17 will be my opposite. X is going to be my adjacent because it's one of the legs, so it's not the hypotenuse. So we're going to set up O and A. Oh, I see that O and A go with T, which is for tangent. So I'm going to set up tangent of that 43 degrees is equal to opposite 17 over adjacent x. We'll multiply both sides by that x like we did in the previous ones. So then I have x tangent of 43 is equal to 17. So what's the opposite of multiplying by the tangent of 43? Dividing by the tangent of 43. Get rid of that guy on this side. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So then in our calculators, we'll plug in exactly what we see here. I'm going to push my control divide, or however you want to get to your fraction function. Type in 17 on top, scroll down, trig button, tangent of 43. It's exactly the same thing. We press enter, and we find out that our missing side is approximately 18.2. Okay, so x is going to be approximately 18.2. I will bring in the other calculators now and show you guys how those work. I'm not going back through all of these problems. I also didn't want to use all 3 calculators for every single problem. First thing I will do is I will show you the iPhone, the hashtag calculator. Okay, I'm first going to show you the sine of 38 right here. You'll just push the sine button and type in 38 exactly like you do on your calculator. Close up parentheses and press enter. And you're going to wind up with the same thing that we got here. Okay? Same thing, you've got your cosine button and your tangent button. With the hyper, I don't use this one as much, so pardon me. Zoom out a little bit more. We have our sine, cosine, and tangent buttons right here. So I would just plug in sine, type in 38. I don't know why we got multiple 3's. And what's great is you still have that backspace button too. Okay, 38, press enter, and you get the exact same thing. All right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you on a Post-it one of the problems that we had. We ended up with, on the first sine, we had 30 multiplied by the sine of 80 degrees was equal to x. So using this right here to do it on the iPhones, okay, you just type it in exactly like you see it. You can do the 30 and then press your sine button and then type in that 80, close the parentheses, press enter, and you wind up with that approximately 29.5. Okay? I will go ahead and show you the division one while it's here. So, for the division one, we ended up with x sine of 42 equal 35. We end up having divide by sine of 42, right? So we divide by the sine of 42. So here, this is where this one get a little frustrating because you have to use this little arrow button down here, okay, next to this infinity thing. If you press that arrow button over, you're going to see a fraction function right here. So you can type on that, and it'll bring it up just like your calculator. But then you do have to go back and push this arrow button to go back to the original screen. We'll type 35 on the top. You have your arrows just like you do on your calculator at school. You scroll down. Now we're in the bottom, and we push sine of 42. Close out the parentheses, press enter, and there's that 52.3 that we had. Okay? I'm not going to show you the cosine and tangent. It's the same thing. It's just the different functions. With your hyper, okay, with the hyper one here, if we wanted to do the 30 sine of 80 to figure it out, we just do the same thing. 30, type in sine, and then type in your 80, and it looks like it actually already, you only have to press enter. How nice of that. One less button you have to press. You don't have to press this equal sign. Pops up there right for you. Okay? If we go to the division one now, so here, I'm going to have to locate it. I know there was a fraction function here. Try my shift. Nope. May have to, I'm going to pause the recording and look for it. Like I said, I don't use this one very often at all. 1 second to find it. Okay, I can't find it, so we're just going to move on. Another thing is you need to make sure that you are in degree mode. That is one big thing I forgot to talk about. Here, this DRG button, okay, I want you to notice what's happening at the top of the screen. Every time I change it, you see how this is changing? You're going to want to make sure that it says DEG for degree mode. Okay, I think the iPhone and the Hyper, these automatically default to degree. I'm going to bring back the other calculator and show you how to make sure that is in degree mode, because that will not automatically be in Hyper. I'm sorry, not Hyper. It will not automatically be in degree mode. So here we're just going to take the 35 and we will do divided by, and then we'll do parentheses just in case, sine of the 42. Okay, close your parentheses. I guess we got to back out of it. Backspace, arrow over, close. Okay, let's see if this works. It says 52.3, bada bing, right there. Again, sorry, I don't use the Hyper one as much. All right, but that's how you can use that. Now, with the calculators, I'm going to clear it real quick because it should default back to what we call radians. We don't want that. So when we click on here, I want you guys to see in the top of the screen right here where it says rad. Okay? What we need to do is we need to get rid of that. There are several ways to do it. We could push a bunch of buttons, but instead what I want you to do is this middle button that you can actually get that arrow moving around. I want you to locate that arrow, drag it all the way up here, and you see how now it says radian, and you have a little finger to push on it. Press that button, and it'll change to degree. And until the calculator is cleared with the way we clear it for the tests, it should be fine. Okay, it should stay in degree mode, but just to check, every time you use one of these calculators, quiz, test, notes, assignments, make sure that that says DEG. Make sure that over here we have DEG. On the iPhone, let me see where it is. It is going to be that one. Nope, that's not it. I think it's on the right here. So whenever you have to push the button, so here's the home screen, you push the infinity button here, and it's automatically in degree. Don't change that. So that's where I'm saying the Hyper and the calculator hashtag automatically are in degree mode unless you change it. That's the great thing about those. But whenever you are at school, you need to make sure that this says degree. All right? I know these notes took a little bit longer, but I needed to make sure that you were introduced to the calculator.